not a luxury. I repeat, taking a flight should no longer be considered a luxury in modern-day India, which is why when the cost of flights jumps up, in some cases as much as 9 times, it's not a problem just for the super rich to deal with. It's middle-class India who is suffering. People fly not just for fancy holidays, but for work, to meet family, and sometimes to deal with emergencies like in Manipur and with the Odisha train tragedy recently. Which is why Mirror Now has focused relentlessly on the issue of the mid-air extortion we're seeing right now. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. These are routes that Go First flew with significant market share. After the airline suspended flights on 3rd of May, prices have jumped. But look at the extent of increase. Let me take Delhi Leh, which usually costs around 5,000 rupees. For 8th June, the ticket price is 22,400 rupees. Now, for those who say last-minute travel costs a lot anyway, take a look at the prices 1 month from now, on 8th of July. It's over 16,000 rupees, still 4 times the original price. Chandigarh-Srinagar, which usually costs around 4,000 rupees, is now at over 27,500 rupees. And its cost is even more a month from now on 8th of July. A whopping 35,000 rupees, nearly a 9 times increase if I compare it to its usual cost of 4,000 rupees. It's not just travel destinations that are impacted. Some might say, oh, Go First flights have shut down. They flew a lot of flights in certain sectors and that's the problem. It's not just that. That's a fallacy. Even for the busiest routes in the country, the costs are soaring. A Delhi-Mumbai flight, which is the busiest route, costs nearly 20,000 rupees if I was booking for tomorrow. That's up nearly 10,000 rupees than what it cost 6 months ago. Similarly, a Bengaluru-Delhi flight for tomorrow is 17,000 rupees. And it's not that even a month later it's getting any cheaper. It's still about 16,000 rupees. So why are we seeing this jump in flight tickets? Now, some of this is due to summer travel plans when demand increases, and yes, demand has increased exponentially. We had one of the highest ever passengers flying on the 30th of April. Go First operations being suspended has impacted. That means that supply of aircrafts and seats on flights has shrunk massively, and that is also one of the reasons that took place on 3rd of May, and you're seeing the jump in prices since then. Other airlines also don't have all their aircraft with them. 25 SpiceJet aircrafts were grounded due to repairs some time ago. 38 Indigo aircrafts are not operational due to engine issues. I'm talking about in the month of Feb. But is it as simple as that? Is it as simple as less flights, more demand? To understand this, we have to figure out how airfares are calculated. Let's go into that detail. Now, the price of what you pay is determined on complex algorithm. So it's not as simple as, someone in an airline office is sitting and deciding how much you pay. There's an algorithm, a software behind it. And this algorithm uses factors like distance, flying, demand, customer profile to determine prices. Airlines set up a pricing schedule for their flights, and once a certain number of seats are filled, the next set of seats are usually priced even higher. That's when you see this monster of surge pricing that we all deal with. Leisure travel to holiday destinations are priced differently than travel on regular routes and are usually slightly higher. The starting price is at a higher rate than regular routes. And that is the formula that works. But what is happening right now? Why are we seeing this sudden surge? We're going to be talking about it in the show. But we also have to ask the question that what the government should do. Should airfares be regulated? Should those price caps that we saw during the pandemic be brought in? We posed some of those questions to the Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia today. Listen.
So one question, you've mentioned this in interviews and you've said this right now as well. You've said that aviation is a deregulated sector, and rightly so. But we've seen in the past when there have been emergency situations like COVID, your predecessor in the same government announced price bands and price buckets for certain sectors, and all of this was voted for. So my question is this, that even after this meeting, if you feel that the prices still continue to be high, what is the next step forward? Because, I mean, this is also in the spirit of Sushashan and Garib Kalyan, because people last minute, those who need to travel, for instance, as we've seen in Balasore, for absolutely important reasons, they are the ones who are suffering.
But I will say this, that I'm very clear that even though that this is a deregulated sector, certainly fare rises due to exceptional circumstances, such as the routes that I mentioned, and specifically the cities that I mentioned, where those 315 routes that were being plied are no longer being plied, and we have replaced them with 68 in those very cities. But nevertheless, there is excess demand there, but we must make sure that the maximum prices are within a certain limit, and we have conveyed that message very clearly to the airlines. And as far as extenuating circumstances, it is completely unacceptable if prices go to that high. In a situation where the market determines the price, I do not think that in a deregulated sector one can look at that option. But as I mentioned, the message has been sent very clearly that we cannot have prices that are way beyond what should rationally be done, specifically when we have certain instances take place, such as the Go First situation or other calamities or extenuating circumstances. Airlines must be proactive in terms of monitoring their prices as opposed to being reactive after the ministry or DGCA steps in.
We're going to be speaking to several stakeholders on the show, but let me begin with a member of parliament who is also part of the Parliamentary Committee on Civil Aviation. Imtiaz Jaleel of the AIMIM is joining me. He's an MP who is part of that particular committee. Thank you so much, Mr. Jaleel, for speaking with us this evening on Beyond the Headline. Now, as an MP, and that to a member of the panel on civil aviation, the first question I must ask you really is why your committee has not taken up this matter?
In fact, in the last meeting itself, we had raised this issue of airlines increasing their fares exorbitantly. And I think we are living in an era now where a few years back, if we were going to a theater and we were not able to get the ticket, then there were people standing outside and selling those tickets in black. This is actually the same what is happening now with the airlines. How can you charge 30,000, 40,000 for a fare in normal days would have cost you not more than 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 rupees. We can understand 10%, 15%, 20% rise, but almost 500% hike in air tickets is simply unexplainable. And I don't know. I just heard the statement from the Civil Aviation Minister, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia, that we have told the airlines, no, airlines are making money. The government will have to step in, and the government will have to tell them, we are giving you 24 hours time. Please control your fares. You can't just issue directions, because the DGCA, the other agencies also need to step in and take control of the situation.
Okay, so you're saying give the airlines 24 hours, let them fix it. Let me give you a counter argument. The counter argument will be that this is a free market economy, and the government cannot tell private players to fix their prices in a certain way. That will kill the idea of an open industry and a free market. What would you say to that?
I could have understand the situation if there was a war going on somewhere and the fuel prices had skyrocketed. I could have understand that situation, that because they are buying the fuel, because the other costs have gone up suddenly. What is the reason? See, even the airlines will have to come and explain what is the reason, what is the logic for the steep highs of 400, 500, 100%. You are absolutely right that the government can't control the private sector. They can't tell the private sector. But if the private sector is making money out of people, then somebody will have to come in and take the situation under control. And this is exactly what we are expecting from the Civil Aviation Minister, to call an urgent meeting of all the airlines and seek their response, their reply. What is the reason? What is the logic? You just can't come out and say, no, I have issued directions to the airlines. Airlines will also have to explain their position that this is the reason why we have raised the flight. I can understand because number of sectors are not flying now because of the Go Air imbroglio that we are seeing, which is why there's a huge demand on those sectors, and which is precisely the reason that other airlines have found a great opportunity. Hey, Go Air is not flying now. Let's make money out of this opportunity. So this is something a black marketing type of a thing, and I don't see any logical reason why the rates have suddenly gone so high.
The logical reason being given is that there is supply and demand, high supply, low supply, and high demand. So what is the proposal? What is the solution that you're suggesting? Are you saying that price bands should come back the way it was during COVID?
Basically, the solution will have to come from the airlines itself. If they have increased the fares, they will have to explain to the people of this country that this is the reason why we have increased the fare. And then only the government should step in and say that this is the problem you are facing, we will help you out. But don't charge this amount from the common people. I have come across so many people who are like stuck up. They can't take up airlines. They don't have connectivity with the railways because the season is going on. The summer vacations are going on. There's a huge rush in trains also. So it's a very difficult situation for travelers, whether they are traveling by train, they're not getting tickets. Whether if they want to travel by air, they can't afford it because the rates are just too high. So it's for the airlines and for the government to come out with the solution. And see, being a member of the Civil Aviation Committee of the Standing Committee of the central government, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia makes it a point that he holds meeting every month to inform us how they are going to get green fuel for the aviation sector. Now, that is not very important as of now. The very important fact is he should convene a meeting of the standing committee, of the consultative committee, and come out explain to the committee members at least that this is the reason. Because ultimately, as a member of parliament, I have to also answer the people when they ask me, sir, ye itna rate बढ़ गया है, हम कैसा ये करेंगे करके उसमें. So people who have money, they can travel 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 rupees, they won't mind. But a common person who you have made it a habit by bringing normalcy in the air ticket rates, you have given him a habit of flying. So now when he wants to fly, you are saying ki nahi. If you want to pay this, then only you can fly.
Okay, so that's the sign that more and more people are flying also displays the growth in the Indian economy and how there is a demand. And I want to come to your point on that. Airlines argue that if the passengers are facing so much trouble, then seats would not be selling. Their aircrafts would be going empty. But that's not the case. Passenger load is in some cases as high as 90%, 80% plus. That means on every flight, on an average, more than 80% of the seats are full. Seats are getting sold. They're booked. So where is the incentive for airlines to drop the fares? People are still buying them.
Let me make this point very clear. There was a time when the middle class, the lower middle class would dream of taking a flight. It was their dream. Now today we see even the middle class, lower middle class taking flights. Now the airlines are absolutely right. And this is exactly what I have said. People who can afford 30,000 for flying from Aurangabad to Delhi, Aurangabad to Mumbai is a normal 6,000, 7,000 rupee fare, maximum 7,000 rupee fare. And today it's being sold for 18,000 rupees. What is the logic? So airlines are absolutely right when they're saying, hey, our flights are going full. We are getting 90%, 95% booked. Every flight is getting booked. So they're absolutely right. But who are those people who can afford to pay 30,000, 40,000, and among them are the members of parliament, because we don't have to shell from our pockets. It's the government who pays. So even if they charge us 80,000 rupees, I don't mind buying that ticket because my tickets are borne by the government of India. So I have absolutely no problem. But what about the common people? What about the middle class? We should also think about it. And let me make this very clear. I'm very, very thankful to Mirror now for taking up this issue, because this is a very, very important issue. And yours is the only channel which has always been in the forefront of taking up such type of issues which nobody dares to even touch.
Yeah, thank you for that. We do believe it's an important issue and we will keep pursuing it. Thank you for that, Mr. Jaleel. MPs should also have to pay the fares. Only then perhaps they will move on this. Jitendra Bhargav, former ED, Air India, joining me on the show. Professor Sriram Khanna, Managing Editor, Consumer Voice magazine, with me today. I'm speaking with Ashwini Kakkar, Managing Partner, Indventure, and Parampreet Singh Bakshi, Vice President of CAPA India. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for speaking with us on the show. Mr. Bhargav, let me start with you, because we've been having, this constant conversation on airfares, and we are seeing no change whatsoever. Today, when we pulled out ticket prices a month from now, we said, okay, last minute travel is always expensive. Let's pull out prices a month from now. There's no major change. It's still very, very high. It belies this argument that this is just a temporary phenomenon.
Tamanna, we got to really look into the whole scenario of what's happened and what's being done. You showed the minister's interview where he said the demand has been going up. That's one part of the market dynamics. The other part is with relation to capacity in the market. I have been saying it repeatedly. Even in the pre-COVID era, there were 3,100 flights being operated to fly 4.11 lakh passengers. And today, when you have 4.35 to 4.4 lakh passengers flying a day, how can you have lesser number of flights? Number one. The second point I've been emphasizing and reiterating time and again is that all airlines had put in their request for the summer schedule on the number of flights that they will operate. That was 3,272 air flights spread over 11 airlines which operate on the domestic sector. Are we operating that many flights? The answer is no. Forget the Go First for a moment. Even the other airlines are not operating that many flights. Compliance of SpiceJet, for example, has been only 53%. Some airlines are doing 70%. Now, why can't they be made to fly or keep up their commitment? The maximum number of flights that you opt for is only for peak season. And if this is not peak season, when will the peak season come?
Right.
So the fares are going up, not as a consequence of the market demand, which has already been factored in, and market is expected to grow. But, and this is why airlines are buying aircraft. If the demand was to be stagnant, why would airlines be buying aircraft?
No, so why are they flying less flights? Let's cut to the chase. Why are they flying less flights? You're making the point that the supply is constrained because airlines, and I'm going to put this very simply because we should really cut out the technicality. Our viewers are suffering. They should understand why. You're saying very, very simply that airlines are flying less flights than they promised. So supply becomes less. Demand is anyway growing. Less supply, more demand equals price goes up. Why do you think that they're flying less flights? Mr. Bhargav.
Is this to me?
Yes, yes. Follow up to you, sir.
Tamanna, is this question to me?
Yes, yes, it is. Follow up to you, sir. Can you hear me? Okay, I don't think he's getting my audio. I don't think Jitendra Bhargav is getting my audio. We'll try and fix that and get back to him in just a bit. But I want to come to Mr. Bakshi on this part. Mr. Bakshi, this portion or this point is very, very crucial about the number of flights that are taking off. One would assume that the number of flights being operated will go up when there is a lacunae left in the market with a player like Go First sort of exiting, which didn't even have the dominant market share. It wasn't the largest player operating, let's be honest. So why has that not happened?
Hi, Tamanna. Good evening. So there are, you've already covered it in detail earlier. There's a big challenge in terms of capacity issues with the airlines are facing, and it's not just only for new aircraft; it's also for existing aircraft. And we know that that as of now we have perhaps the highest aircraft on ground that we have ever seen in the past. And this is because of the supply side constraints that has impacted all this capacity and created such serious capacity issues which we haven't seen before. And as a result, this is reflecting in high fares. Now let me look at some other industries and try and figure out if this is unique to aviation. If you look at the railways and we look at the dynamic pricing over there, we realize that in cases where the demand supply mismatch happens, fares for railways also goes up. We have also seen it in the hotel industry. Right now, the prices of hotel rooms are perhaps the highest that people have seen in a very, very long time. So it's not just unique to our sector. Obviously, there are ways and means of addressing it, but the demand supply dynamics as and when it changes, and when you look at a industry where the pricing of the product is on a dynamic basis, it is but natural that the shortfall in supply gets reflected in the pricing of the product. So we believe that the fares may rationalize a bit starting from July, which will be the off-peak season, and then hopefully starting the second half of this year when the supply side constraints ease and there is significant capacity addition which happens, which is expected, we hope that the fares will moderate further. So for now, it seems like for the next few months there might be a challenge, but hopefully going forward in the second half of the year, things should improve.
We can hope for, everyone hopes for the best, but that's not the point. The point is, why is this happening? I know, Mr. Bakshi, you track the sector in an academic way, so you're perhaps, saying that this is what happens, supply, demand, and more capacity being increased and all of that. Is what is happening right now fair? Is it justified? That's the very hard and frankly uncomfortable question we want to ask this evening. Mr. Bhargav, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Mr. Bakshi made that point of a number of aircraft being on ground. Let me contest this as with my airline experience. When the airlines submitted their flight schedule to the DGCA for approval starting March 2023, they ought to have factored in aircraft availability, crew availability. So for them to say that, look, we have so many aircraft on ground which have been there since January or last year, etc., does not hold water. I will stick to my point out that, look, they submitted a certain schedule to the DGCA, and they very well knew the number of aircraft available with them for flying and the crew available. Now, there is no rationale for them not to be flying that number of approved flights. And to me, that's the main cause of the fares being at a very escalated level. And as you very rightly said here, once the load factors cross a certain factor, 80%, 85%, 90%, the fares go up very steeply. And that is what we have been talking about, fare of 20,000 between Delhi, Mumbai, and other sectors being very high.
Hear me, Mr. Bhargav, when you couldn't hear me, I was asking you why. We're going to cut to the chase this evening.
Okay, I'll
why?
Come to
Why do you think they're flying less flights? Is it because Pratt and Whitney
a lot of people have been saying
didn't fix their engines? Why do you think so?
Yes. Less number of aircraft.
Yes.
Let me put it bluntly here. 40% is the fuel cost when you fly an aircraft. Then you are paying pilots, you're paying cabin crew, you are incurring costs for navigation, landing charges. So when you can get incremental money through higher load factors, where is the incentive for an airline to put in the entire capacity or the capacity that was committed by them to DGCA? That's been my simple point. So unless they've had an incentive, why would they not fly? And their incentive is very clearly in getting higher load factors on fewer number of flights. And as I said earlier, SpiceJet compliance rate 53%, but load factor highest in the industry. Can any expert explain to me that there is lack of correlation between the two?
Mr. Bakshi, you want to take that one?
So the point is, Tamanna, we look at these prices, but the other factor also is how many tickets are selling out of those prices. Is it one ticket or is it 50 tickets? Right? Because these are all volume weighted. Let me put it like that. So while we may pick up one ticket selling at 30,000 and say that prices are high, but if on an average the price of the tickets on a particular flight is, let's say, lower, then we have to look at it from that perspective as well. I would refrain from commenting on whether airlines have an incentive or a disincentive to fly and what the regulators are well placed to take action against that if some airline is not meeting their schedules. There are clear regulations and guidelines around it, so those actions can be taken. But the fact of the matter is that we can't deny the fact that capacity is a constraint, unfortunately, and perhaps the pent-up demand which was there, which happened after COVID lockdown happened, unlocking happened. Perhaps that pent-up demand has a long tail and it's still continuing.
It's been a year.
So it is a
challenge. It's been a year. Ashwini Kakkar, is this still a
across industries?
Okay, Ashwini Kakkar, is this still a post-COVID story? Can we still say it's a post-COVID story? It's been a year.
Not at all. I think, this is pure predatory, opportunistic, and usurious pricing. And I think, I have faith in the minister. I think if I know whatever little I know about him, I think he's capable of using both the carrot and the stick. He's put out the carrot, but I don't think it will be too long before he uses the stick. Let us remember that this is a very, very large country, approximately 3,500 kilometers wide and 3,500 kilometers north. It is a necessity. Sick people travel on planes. People travel due to emergencies and deaths. People are suffering because of that rail accident and, in that kind of situation. And in the Northeast, the situation was not good. So I think instead of coming together with the customers and the country, what it seems is that the airlines are only interested in making a ton of money out of people's misfortunes.
Right.
And this will not stand them in good stead. Instead, what would be very good on their part would be if they were to try and garner some goodwill from both customers, the government, and other stakeholders, and that's quite easy, because what they could do is they could drop the top two buckets. At the end of the day, how many customers will book in the top two buckets? And then they can go on social media and say, look, we've dropped the top two buckets. We are going to support the country. We are going to support the customer, and everybody will remember them and they will become heroes instead of becoming zeros by doing what they are doing. Yes, there is another side of the story, which is that, the Pratt & Whitney engines have created chaos in our country.
They have.
Because
There is no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. The Pratt & Whitney side of the story is also important. They have created chaos.
Yes.
And
not only that,
Go First is suffering.
Yeah, fuel prices are still high. I think the taxes, which nobody talks about, are still quite high, I must say to you, and the dollar-rupee parity has worsened. So all these factors, I think, we need to bear in mind on the other side of the story. But equally, you cannot equate a corporate customer who's traveling on your airline with somebody who's very sick, who's a cancer patient coming to a different city for treatment, or somebody who's had a death in the family.
Can airlines really discriminate or differentiate like that? You're going on the website and booking. I want to get Professor Sriram Khanna into this. Professor Sriram Khanna, obviously customers are suffering. But where do you think is the solution?
Well, the solution lies in New Delhi, in the office of the DGCA, and the minister who heads the Civil Aviation Ministry, who seems to be sleeping in his Kumbhkarniya sleep, and all this noise is not reaching to him. He is simply shutting his eyes to the industry, extorting money from passengers, from citizens who were given the promise of Sabka Vishwas and Sabka Vikas. Now, that faith has really been shattered in the airline industry, with the airline using their power for making extra money. And not only, this is not a natural scarcity of supply. Apart from Govt and SpiceJet flights being grounded because of reasons beyond their control, the large operators are also not flying all their scheduled flights. My friend Mr. Bhargav has illustrated time and again that all the flights they have put in their schedule, they are deliberately reducing supply. And when they reduce supply, it exacerbates an already bad situation and makes it worse, so that they can make more money. So can't you see what is happening? I can see, sitting in my house, that the airlines are fooling the public, and with the complicity of the minister and the sleeping DGCA, they are looting people. What is this?
Okay, we need to have a nuanced conversation. We need to have a nuanced conversation on this. Let's have a nuanced, sensible conversation on this. And I agree.
This is the only nuance I know.
Yeah.
This is the only nuance I can contribute.
I want to understand. Look, I want to understand why. Because in any industry, it doesn't make sense to kill the golden goose that lays the egg. You don't want people not to fly because they can't afford it, find alternatives, and then how are you going to grow? So we need to understand why this would be happening. And, you know, let's understand what's happening in the industry right now. Let me come back to you, Mr. Bakshi, on this point specifically. So one part of the puzzle seems to be that you're just flying less aircraft. Have expansion plans not taken off on schedule either? Because by now, the Udan plan should have kicked in. You should have had many more aircraft coming in. Jet should have been back on its feet, possibly. Has all of this led to a perfect storm on prices?
Well, Tamanna, so first let me just clarify based on whatever little I know and we are aware of. The flight schedules which were filed reflected the capacity constraints, excluding obviously Go Air case. So, and that's why we saw that and those flight schedules were filed based on the available aircraft, and which is why we saw very moderate growth in terms of the capacity which was coming in. So that's where we are in terms of flight scheduling. And in terms of the other factors that you mentioned, now we all know there are some things which are in our control, some things which are beyond the industry's or the players' control. The case of Jet Airways, we know it's been dragging along for so long. Unfortunately, it hasn't panned out the way it should have. But that capacity was out of the system about 2-3 years ago.
Yes.
So it's not a recent phenomenon that would impact any aircraft availability as of now. But the factor that the players which are established, who have expansion plans, have placed big orders or intend to place big orders, that reflects on the fact that serious players in the business are aligned to what the growth is, and hence they are planning their capacity expansion accordingly. Now, obviously, all of that will take time, and it will have to be a case of doing multiple things. Maybe increasing aircraft utilization could be one of the ways of handling this situation. But there will be a scenario where we will have a situation once the capacity comes in, the prices will also go down accordingly. So I again reiterate, I don't feel that this is a permanent scenario, unless of course the growth surprises everybody, including us. We believe that this scenario will get sorted out.
We were surprised even in May. If I compare Jan to March, or Jan to May actually. Jan to May passenger data compared 23 and 22, you've seen about a 40% plus increase.
Yes.
That was not budgeted for. Year on year, April 23 and April 22 has seen a 22% increase. That was unexpected. April 30th saw the highest number of passengers flying in India ever. And in one day, that's 30th April. That was not expected. So I don't know.
We expected that, Tamanna, we expected that, honestly speaking. But
okay.
And we also knew that given the supply constraints that are there will be a shortage of supply.
But Mr. Bakshi, if you expected it, didn't Airlines expect it? Didn't the DGCA expect it? Didn't the Civil Aviation Ministry expect it? Those are the people who need to expect it and plan for it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that you at CAPA, you were, studying this. You're experts in the field. That's why we have you today. You know it. That's great. But what about the people who have to do something about it? So let me come back to where the solutions lie. And Mr. Bhargav, today in that conversation, Jyotiraditya Scindia also said, I don't think we're going to bring back price caps. I don't think there should be price caps either. You don't want to go into price caps. You don't want to become that market which, decides what the top price and the bottom price is. What is the carrot here before the stick comes out?
The only way is capacity deployment. If you have Go First with 24 aircraft available, they've submitted their revival plan. If the Ministry of Civil Aviation can fast track it, for whatever considerations it is, you get some additional capacity into the market. This is, of course, in addition to my earlier contention that airlines must be asked to put in the capacity that they had committed to DGCA. It can't be left to the airlines and to say or hold up their brief that, look, airlines are capacity constrained. Let me put it this way. In the month of April, Go First was flying. So they were operating a certain number of flights. Go First suspended flights from the 3rd of May. Did the other carriers not put in capacity? From where did the capacity suddenly come in? Clearly indicating that they had capacity with them. They were not fully deploying it. So DGCA ought to come into the picture and say, look, this is your original plan that you submitted after factoring in everything. Why is it that you're flying less number of flights? And the moment you put in 300 aircraft flights inventory into the market, you will ensure that the fares will cool down to some extent. And I appreciate the point that Mr. Ashwini Kakkad said earlier. It's for the airlines also to earn the goodwill. There is no reason why the price band that they have should go up to an extent of 55,000 rupees on some sectors. They can certainly reduce it to earn the goodwill of the passengers as compensation for not flying as per the DGCA approved flight schedule. There has to be some stick to be shown by the Ministry of Civil Aviation and DGCA.
Yep, absolutely. I want to pull up what the airfares have gone up to in certain sectors and relate them to what is happening in Manipur, where there's ongoing violence, and in Balasore, the train tragedy, and how flight rates just jumped massively in these sectors. It was horrific. You suddenly had flight tickets going up as high as 25 to 30,000 rupees. This is when people needed to fly from Imphal, from Kolkata, Bhubaneswar, Kolkata, Imphal. Just look at the rates. It's gone as high as 24,000, Kolkata, Bengaluru. That was after the train tragedy. That's just not done. Ashwini Kakkad, what's the solution in your view? Mr. Kakkad, can you hear me? Oh, I think his connection's lost. We'll try and get him back. Mr. Bakshi, let me come to you on this point. Now, Go First in May this year had a 6.9% market share, so sub 7% market share. Should this have shaken up the sector that much? And where do you think the solution lies? Will we have to just wait and see, like you said, and hope for the best by the end of the year, when, by the way, you'll have another set of holiday travel demand coming in?
Go First, obviously on the sectors on which it flew, the market share doesn't talk about sector-specific market share. It talks about general overall market share. So that needs to be looked at in slight detail. But on sectors where it would have had a larger presence, obviously there would be some impact which would have been felt till the time that capacity is addressed by other players or maybe Go First, depending on its flight schedule. So that's that on Go First. In terms of the solution, obviously it will have to be a combination of efforts by all stakeholders. The minister has talked about it. Overall, the request or requirement of self-monitoring may have a limited impact since as long as there's a market for such airfares. So as long as somebody buys a 20,000 rupee ticket, the airline would sell it, and the correction may not be feasible till that time. So it's also a function of, if people are buying it, the airline will perhaps sell it. We just need to, in some cases, we just need to lay out with time and see that once the
I asked
capacity
that
addition
question
happens,
to Mr. Jaleel. If people keep buying, why will the airline stop selling? Is that fair though, Mr. Kakkar? Because you might have a situation where someone's desperate for that flight. There's a family emergency. You are going to pay through your nose if you need to.
Absolutely right, Tamanna. Because, I mean, look, if somebody has cancer treatment at the Tata Memorial Hospital tomorrow morning and has to fly from Delhi to try and get that treatment, I mean, if the flight is at 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, and some flights are today in excess of 50,000 rupees per sector. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is completely opportunistic and predatory. And the airline should refrain from this, because public hai, ye sab janti hai.
Solution क्या है, Kakkar साहब? Solution क्या है? Price cap होना चाहिए, or would that be really anti-free market?
I think if the airlines continue to behave like this, then not only price caps, I think they should be brought to book, because and they can actually do themselves a favor by saying to the public, by saying to the customers, and by saying to the government, look, we are abolishing for this period. We stand by the country. There has been an accident. There has been, problems in the Northeast. There are issues with another airline. We stand by everybody. And what we are trying to do is we are removing the top two buckets so that, everybody can fly. Because don't forget, the airlines are gaining on two counts. One count is that they are using this usurious pricing, but on the other count, their seat load factors are also going up. So when you multiply the higher seat load factor of 90%, 100%, with a price that is 5 times, I'm sure that every seat is not sold at that 5 times, and I'm not even, trying to profess that. But I'm saying these high-priced seats are sold in the top 2 buckets. If they can remove the top 2 buckets and say, all the other buckets will apply, then the airlines would only do themselves a favor. They will build customers, they will build goodwill, and I think all would be good.
I don't know if it's just about goodwill. Companies need to first build their balance sheet. Then they will come to the goodwill and their customers. Is that what's happening right now? Is that what
their balance sheet will be supported, because the seat load factor will go from 80% to 97%. Okay. That is what will happen. And their balance sheet
what
will
the Civil Aviation Ministry do? Will at least the basic question be asked? Mr. Bhargav has been saying this again and again. Why aren't you flying as many aircraft that you promised you would? Forget about, capping prices, but why aren't you doing what you promised? How do we increase capacity quickly? I think these are important questions that need to be asked. DGCA needs to step in, and we will be relentlessly following the story unless we see some action. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the lead story this evening on Beyond the Headline. Very short break. On the other side, a shocking proposal from the Karnataka child rights body. They're saying girl students should wear salwars or pants instead of skirts. You know why? Because there are increased cases of sexual harassment. So it's the girls who must cover up. We're coming back with that story after the break.